Hello, and welcome to How It's Done, a podcast about how real people do actual things to move their brands and their businesses forward. From the simplest of tactics to the most advanced tools and technologies, we go behind the buzzwords to understand the how. Have you ever seen or read or heard about someone or some company that did something really cool and you wondered, yeah, but how did they do it? Yeah, me too, so here we are. Are you curious? I'm about as curious as they come. So stick around, we'll be curious together, and I promise we'll learn stuff. How It's Done is brought to you by Fuoco, a marketing agency that knows when and how to ignite the spark. I'm Christy Goad, and I'll be your host. Welcome to the show. In this episode of How It's Done, I'm here with Karey Witty, Chief Operating Officer of Envision Healthcare. Welcome, Karey. Thanks for making the time to talk with me today.
Thank you, Christy. Great to be here.
For our listeners who may not be familiar with Envision Healthcare, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit more about the company and your role.
Sure. Envision is a healthcare organization headquartered here in Nashville. We serve over 35 million patients annually through either one of our 260 ambulatory surgery centers, one of our many hospital-based physician groups. We have colleagues that are emergency medicine physicians, radiologists, anesthesiologists, hospitalists, etc., hospital-based physicians, as well as a home health agency. So we have many touch points through the patient population, basically throughout the United States.
Wow. And what is your role here as Chief Operating Officer?
So as COO, I have the P&L responsibility for the organization. We are privately held by KKR, generating revenues of about $8.5 billion annually.
Impressive.
It's big.
And this, correct me if I'm wrong, Karey, but so far in your illustrious career, you've served in a C-level role at 5 different healthcare companies thus far?
You know, I'd have to go look at my very long CV to count, but it is a number. My first C-level position was probably in 2001 in St. Louis, Missouri, with a company, Centene Corporation, as its chief financial officer.
Wow. You've seen a lot of changes in healthcare.
Hence the gray hair, yes.
And you're also super active with JDRF and the American Heart Association. We're going to spend most of our time today talking about that service. Can you tell us about your role with those organizations?
Sure. I have served on the chapter boards for JDRF in St. Louis, also here in Middle Tennessee. I've served on the International Board of Directors for JDRF. JDRF is internationally headquartered in New York City. And I also serve on the board of the American Heart Association and the Monroe Carell Jr. Children's Hospital at Vanderbilt.
Wow. That's a lot of service.
Well, not all of it's concurrent, but yeah, I mean, you find these passions in life and you run with it. And
you're also a father of 4?
I'm a father of 4. We have 3 girls and a son. We're pretty close to being empty nesters. We're down to our 14-year-old at home. The other 3 are out and about. One in Southern California, one in Boulder, one in Chicago.
And it is your children, is my understanding, serving with you as a fellow board member of JDRF here in Middle Tennessee. You have 2 kids with type 1.
Correct.
And that is part of your passion for being involved
Sure.
there. But you also have a connection to the Heart Association personally and with your son Daniel. Is that right?
That's correct. That's right. Yes, my daughter Evie was diagnosed with type 1 in 2006. And it was probably about that time, probably 2007 or 8, that I joined the board of JDRF there in St. Louis. We moved to Nashville in 2009, and Daniel was diagnosed shortly thereafter. He was 4, diagnosed with type 1. So therefore, I just continued my service in JDRF when we moved to the Nashville community. Daniel was also born with a congenital heart defect. He has had what's called an atrioventricular canal. I always say anytime you use the word canal and heart side by side, it can't be a good thing. And in fact, it's not. So he had two sizable holes in his heart and only one working valve. So it's pretty amazing that a cardiovascular surgeon can go in and crack this 7-week-old chest and convert this what's called a heart that's probably the size of a quarter into an absolute perfected working heart. So it's pretty amazing stuff that the medical community and surgeons are able to do. So personally, I was born with a hole in my atrium wall, which my surgery when I was 6, so in 1970, that was a big deal.
Yeah, that was a little bit different technology at the time, right?
And that was at the old St. Thomas Hospital here in town. And it was a big deal. I was on the news. This is in the big city of Murfreesboro at the time, which is a whopping 35,000 people. On the news and the newspaper, it was a big deal in 1970. Anymore, an ASD repair can be done, I'll say minimally invasive. It's, you don't crack the chest anymore. The advancements in medicine have come such that it's a much less invasive surgery and repair and fairly common.
That's amazing. Well, it makes it clear that tie that to Monroe Carell Children's Hospital.
Correct.
For you.
That's right.
Wow, with all that going on, you must have so many competing priorities and so many demands on your time. Yet, I think we all find time for the people and the causes that are important to us. So that is what I want to talk with you about today, is how you do that and how, as a busy executive in these high-stakes, high-pressure world that we live in, how you make those decisions about your time and about giving back, and why giving back is important, especially for executives like yourself and the companies that you lead. So maybe we could step back a little bit and, first of all, maybe talk a little bit more about what JDRF is and what type 1 diabetes is and why people should care, because
Sure.
I know we get that question all the time as board members. And, you know, you and I did a ride this weekend raising money for MS, the Jack and Back, and we wore our JDRF jerseys, and we had people all along the ride asking us, what's JDRF? Mm-hmm. And that was an educational opportunity for us.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit more about that. So the people that are listening, this could be an opportunity for them to learn that too.
Sure. JDRF is an international organization, nonprofit, I would say leading the fight against type 1 diabetes by funding research, advocating for policies that accelerate access to new therapies, and by providing support for the millions of people around the world impacted by the disease. Internationally, there are about 3 million people with type 1 diabetes. Just over 1.2, 1.3 here in the United States. JDRF is today an acronym, much like AT&T, KFC, et cetera, IBM. Those all used to mean something, but they've long since dropped the meaning. Similarly, JDRF used to be Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. We dropped the nomenclature because increasingly adults are being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So we wanted to de-emphasize the juvenile aspect of diabetes, because the reality is the majority of the 3 million people that I reference are in fact adults. And as I say, increasingly adults are being diagnosed with type 1. So really to shift the focus to the entire patient population versus a kid population.
And something that a lot of people don't understand is the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Type 2 is considered more of a lifestyle disease, and type 1
Correct.
is an autoimmune disease that has nothing to do with your lifestyle.
That's correct. Type 1, your pancreas fails to generate insulin. Therefore, you become insulin dependent through a device, through shots, through some means. Type 2, on the other hand, you're right, your pancreas continues to make insulin, however, generally an inadequate amount of insulin to lower your blood glucose. So therefore, through diet and exercise, that can help. But often, many individuals are required to be on some type of, perhaps it's insulin, some type of an oral med even can reduce glucose levels in a type 2. But type 1, from here to eternity, all right, until we find this cure that we're searching for, type 1 diabetics are insulin dependent.
Something that's been really surprising to me as I've learned about type 1 through board service is, in fact, the people that I have met through this organization are some of the healthiest people I know, some of the most active people I know.
Yeah.
I think that's something that most people out there that have no connection to it would never think of.
Yeah. I think interesting for us, now that we have, we've had 2 children with type 1 for a long time now, but for 10 years we've had 50% of our kids with type 1. And quite honestly, it's become a way of life. I can probably tell you the carb count of most any food out there, which is fun and sometimes useless. But I think for at least the Witty household, it required us to adjust our diet. So all of a sudden, pasta and rice and pizza were not part of the menu. So it forced all of us into a different way of life, and quite honestly, I'd say a better way of life. I think I'm definitely more carb conscious than most individuals, just because I've grown up, kind of counting carbs with my kids, and I think that awareness has seeped into my daughters that don't have type 1. They're used to dosing Daniel, dosing Evie, helping us count carbs, and it just became a way of life. And therefore, I think probably a healthier way of life for all of us.
That's very interesting. Now, did you get into cycling because of JDRF as well? Or were you, I know you're a runner and you obviously cycle a lot now, but was that something that you were doing before?
I bought a bike in 2010 and would putz around doing, 10 or 15 mile rides just for the fun of it. In 2012, Nashville was, I'll say, awarded a site for a JDRF ride. Nationally, JDRF does 6, maybe 7 bike rides throughout the United States, and Nashville became one of those ride locations in 2012. 2012, I happened to be board president of the Middle Tennessee chapter, and I'm asking my fellow directors, hey, has anyone ever participated in one of these JDRF bike rides? And the answer was no. I said, hey, who would like to represent us and do one of these rides in La Crosse or in Arizona or one other location? And it's kind of one of those things where everyone steps back and I'm the only one standing forward. So I was the chosen one, and I went to La Crosse, Wisconsin in 2012, having never done a ride. This was my first century, so a 100-mile bike ride.
Did you train for it?
Inadequately prepared? Absolutely not. My longest ride prior to that was about 30 miles, and I had no idea what I was doing, no idea what I was getting myself into. I remember texting my family, I'm at mile 30, and my wife would be like, oh my gosh, you're crazy, turn around. I'm at mile 45, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Turn around. And I kept clicking along, and just there are cowbells at all the rest stops, people cheering you on, people standing on the sides of the roads. I mean, just the energy and passion from the community willed me to cross the finish line, to be honest. So it was my first century. It was very empowering for me. We, that year in 2012, had a wildly successful ride here in Nashville. It stayed with us for 3 years and has since moved on.
So you did the ride prior to then the Nashville ride, so you would know how it went.
That's correct.
And then you participated in the Nashville ride as well that same year?
That's right, yes.
So 2 centuries in 1 year, and you'd never done a single one before that.
Right. Not smart. But
Overachiever.
Not smart.
Did you have a good bike at the time?
Yeah, I love my bike.
Yeah.
You can spend $10,000 on a bike if you want to, but the bike I bought in 2010 is the bike that I still have today, and I love that bike. It's kind of like my drum set. I bought my first drum set when I was a junior in high school, And I still have that drum set. And I
You
would
do?
never-
Do you still play this drum set?
Still play this drum set, and I will never part with this drum set.
How does your wife Joni feel about this when you're playing this? Or do you have like a quiet room you go to?
I now have an electronic kit that I can put on headphones, so the acoustic doesn't come out very often.
Wow, that's impressive. What kind of drum set is it?
It is a Tama.
A Tama, nice,
Yeah.
nice. And okay, this is a little side note though. So you actually had a band in college though, right?
I did, yes.
What was the name of this band?
We were called The Look.
The Look.
The Look. And
Is
man,
there a
did we look
story
good.
there?
Not really. We were the cleanest cut, most likely band that you would find. I mean, they were like the yuppie band. I mean, it was kind of comical.
That is
No
awesome.
long hair, no tats, no piercings. Just
This is at MTSU.
this is at MTSU. Yes.
You went to MTSU. You're
Yes.
from Murfreesboro
Yes.
originally.
Yes.
Okay. And you were in a band, and you were an accounting major.
I was an accounting major. Yes.
At that time, when you're
That's
this
right.
drummer in a band, did you ever
That's
think
right.
you'd be COO of Envision Healthcare one day?
No, I mean, I knew that I was way too conservative to follow my dream. I mean, had I followed my dream, I'd probably be playing in one of the bars in Lower Broad right now, just now waking up perhaps. But I was not gutsy enough to follow my dream, and I took the conservative route of accounting,
Well, it's all worked out well
the
for
antithesis of being a musician, yeah.
you. Awesome. So that was your first ride in 2012. That's when you got into cycling. You've now done 7 rides,
Right,
and the latest of which was Sonoma this past August,
right.
which was the most ever raised for a JDRF ride.
$3.1
Ride to
million.
Cure.
That's right. That's right.
Although I have heard the stories that road was a little bumpy.
The road was not kind.
Okay, so awesome. And also, I think our team this year for fundraising for JDRF through the Ride to Cure has this been one of our best years? Or
For the ride program for JDRF, absolutely. Right. This is, I haven't heard the totals. The Amelia ride was this past weekend, so I haven't heard the totals yet, but I'm confident this will be a record-breaking year for the ride program for JDRF, yes.
well, it's definitely fun. It's definitely one of the things that got me involved in JDRF, and it's been awesome. So speaking of, what goes into deciding to serve on a board for an organization? And I think you have a really great perspective on this because you've served on so many boards through the years, and I imagine that you're going out with JDRF asking others to serve, and you probably get this question a lot, so I'd be interested and curious about your perspective.
Yeah, I think, admittedly, early in my career, I was in public accounting, and I'm not going to say there was a mandate, but there was a heavy emphasis on community involvement. And so I got involved in a board because maybe I was told to. And that's probably the absolute wrong approach to board service. I think it's one of those classic, you get out of it what you put into it. And I would show up at a board meeting, and I would leave, and great, I got to put board service on my resume, and it looked good, and all that fun stuff. But that's not the way to serve on any kind of board, be it for-profit or nonprofit. As I matured in my career, the reality is my passions were thrust upon me. When you have 2 children diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, what are you going to do with your time? You're gonna seek out who's the leader in the world in type 1 diabetes research, and that happens to be JDRF. When you have congenital heart defects, what organization is doing most to improve awareness, research, education for heart disease? And that's American Heart Association. So, my passions were thrust upon me. There are many others whose passions are developed, and I'm going to turn the mic to you, Christy, and say, I think it's individuals like you that drive me to do more. Your involvement with JDRF is, you don't have the personal thrust that I had. your involvement in JDRF, you have no connection, yet you do everything above and beyond that you can to support and drive our mission. You don't have a child with type 1. You don't have a
Thank
sibling
God.
with type 1. But yet, so it's people like you that drive me to do more. I do it because I have to. You do it because you want to. And I think that's a significant difference. I'm always so prideful of those that give of their time, such as yourself, because you want to, not because you have to.
Well, I will say people ask me why am I involved and what went into the decision for me for joining the board. Somehow, a few years ago, I got on a list of women to watch in healthcare in Nashville. And so I think that put me on the radar for JDRF, and they needed someone with a marketing PR background probably on the board. So Mary Lynn approached me, Mary Lynn Shue, who's a fabulous executive director of JDRF, now Middle and East Tennessee. And so it was kind of a timing thing, right? I was at a point in my career where I'm like, I am in a position, I really want to give back. And I think that, my son's getting older and I'm further along in my career and I do have the time and I want to do this. So I was looking for some way to get involved. And I also was cycling at the time and I'm one of those that I kind of need a goal out there to keep me motivated and keep me training and whatever. So when JDRF approached me, they were talking about their organization and they're like, oh, we also have this ride. I'm like, oh, tell me more about that. And I was like, okay, I could marry my passion for cycling with wanting to get back with the fundraising, because there's fundraising commitments being a board member. And then I also talked to a few people and understood that this is an organization with a really strong staff and strong leadership. And that makes a huge difference in being able to be an effective board member, I think, and having that and just knowing that it's a really good, solid organization that you're going into. And then once I did get involved and start writing with people like yourself, and then so many of the other people on our ride team, their kids with type 1 are riding with us.
Right.
So I have then come to, you guys have become part of my family, right? And I'm like, oh, wow, I can't even begin to fathom the kinds of things that you're managing on a day-to-day basis. And the fact that some of your kids were diagnosed when they were babies, some more when they're teenagers, but just getting to know everyone, it has become personal for me, and seeing the commitment. So I think even though there's not a quote-unquote personal connection to type 1 for me, it has become personal. So I think that's an important part of when you're looking at a group to join is what group are you joining as well.
Right. That's right.
So in terms of board service for nonprofits like American Heart Association, like JDRF, how is that different from serving on the board of a company?
Yeah, wildly different. Let's be honest, the name of the game in a nonprofit is about money, right? It's all about driving money to support the mission. In the nonprofit world, the clock strikes January or maybe it's July 1, whatever their year end is. There is no recurring revenue model in nonprofit, generally speaking. And so it's all about fundraising. And I think you have to know that going in. You have to be comfortable asking for money because in the nonprofit world, our JDRF local chapter, for example, our give or get as a board member, our ask is $25,000 per director. You can give it or you can get it. You can get it through your employer, through employer engagement, through other means. But that is the ask, and we're pretty upfront about that because we want no surprises. So $25,000 give or get is a big number and kind of a scary number for a lot of people. But you have to be comfortable asking, right, for money, and that's not something that I was comfortable with at the outset. It's something that I have grown comfortable with, and quite honestly, it's actually become fun, dare I say. It's almost like it has to be. I've never been in sales, but it must be like sales when you get a win in sales. There has to be that similar adrenaline rush when you get a yes from a commitment from a sponsor, from a CEO, from whomever. But make no bones. Generally speaking, the nonprofit world is about fundraising. For-profit world is very different. It's about governance, right? It's about serving on the audit committee, the compensation committee, but it's a very different role. I think in either case, it's important to understand we are not management, and I think it's you get some A types around the table, and the first thing they want to do is kind of take over how the CEO is going to run the company, the organization, the nonprofit, whatever. We're there as advisors, as advocates. We're not there as management, and I've seen so many directors try to cross that line, and it never works.
That's a very good point. Do you see that happening in nonprofit?
Sure.
In the same way?
Yeah. I mean, it's a personality is a personality, and it's hard to dial it back regardless of the tax status of an organization. But it happens, and we'll use Mary Lynn as a great example. Mary Lynn is fantastic at politely, respectfully being able to put people in their place and remind them as to why they're there.
She really is. She's so good.
She is. Yeah.
Well, so in terms of the board member role and the asking for money, that is one thing that we spend a lot of time as a board sharing stories with each other. Hey, how did you do this? To inspire each other. One of our members on our ride team, Simon Bexon, he does his renowned British Ask videos for money. He's always on me to get my email list together. And I'm like, Simon, that's just, I'm probably not going to be as effective on my email list as I am through social media. There's a lot of different ways to ask for money. Are there some tricks or things that we talk a lot about in JDRF that you would care to share with our audience that may be curious how we go about doing that?
I don't know that I have...
How we inspire people.
Yeah. I don't know that I have tricks per se, but I think the point is there's no one way to ask. I am a social media buffoon, so I'm not on...
I know, I try to tag you, but you can't. It's impossible.
I don't exist. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn, but so I don't play in that world. So I don't blast out to Facebook like many others. That's just...
This is probably how you find time to do all the other things you do. You don't waste
maybe
your
that's
time
right.
on social media.
Maybe. But I think, Simon's methods work for him. Your methods work for you. My methods work for me. I think the point is there's no wrong way to ask for money, just to ask. Inevitably, you're going to get a yes from someone you didn't expect, and you're going to get a disappointing no from someone that you actually expected to give. And that's just how the world works. Going into a company, I'll say it's easy for a C-suite executive to hide behind a foundation. I don't make those decisions. My foundation makes those decisions. So therefore, submit your request to my foundation, and the foundation will deny you or grant you a gift. Personally, I think that's a bit of a cop-out, but you see that quite often. But that's an easy way. If you don't like saying no to your friends, that's an easy way to hide, is to say, it's not up to me, it's up to my foundation. My MO is to use my contacts in the business world, and that's effective for me. It's efficient. Some may send out thousands of emails. I probably send out 30. And it's through those business relationships that I'm able to fundraise for the ride specifically. The galas and other events are a different story, but specifically to the ride, it's more of a rifle shot versus a shotgun.
Well, I think that's a nice segue into, do you have to get sort of corporate level buy-in for the things that you're doing on that personal level? I imagine most corporations that I know of and work with are giving, right? And they do have a sense of responsibility and a passion for giving back to their communities in which they live and work. But there is, I wonder, what is that process, and How difficult is that, or is it not really difficult at all?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, I think at our core, all the business leaders want to be good corporate citizens, and I think it's imperative that we be good corporate citizens. I think our employees, our colleagues, arguably are starved to be engaged in something. It's not enough for someone to come to work, show up at 8, leave at 5, go home. They want to be part of the community. They want to be engaged in some way other than the 8 to 5. And I think a lot of what we offer through the community, through rides, through walks, through songwriters' nights, you name it, Preds nights, sounds games, whatever. I think those are all ways to engage the employees in a different way outside of the 9 to 5. I think in general people are starved and finding ways to be connected. And I think nonprofit organizations are a great way for us to engage our colleagues in a different way, in a perhaps more meaningful and more personal way.
So with that said, once you do have a cause, you don't find it hard to kind of rally the troops, as they say, hey, we're going to be a corporate sponsor of this walk. We want to get teams together. Do you find that it makes it a lot easier since you're so passionate about it and you have a personal story to tell?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, when I get up and talk about American Heart, when I get up in front of the employee base and talk about JDRF, frequently it involves tears, right? Because when I talk about my kids, it's easy to cry, and and there's no showmanship in that. That's just raw reality of who I am, and I think people appreciate the unveiling, if you will, of here's this stiff suit up here, but yet here he is crying about his kids, which I'm going to have to pause because I'll cry about my kids now. But
this is what we love about you.
Yeah, well, I think just, keeping it real, if you will.
Yeah.
My father used to say, that person puts on his or her pants one leg at a time just like you do. So at the end of the day, we're no different. Mm-hmm. I think the blessing that I have is the seat from where I sit enables me to do to drive my passion, share my passion, and thankfully, I'd say in large part, our colleagues will rally behind that passion.
That's awesome. So how important then is it? You've kind of touched on this, but I'm just going to hit it straight on. How important is it for companies, corporations, for-profit to be involved in fundraising and awareness raising for organizations like JDRF and American Heart Association?
It's imperative. It's paramount. Without corporate support, these nonprofits shrivel up and die. Bottom line. I mean, if we're just focused on the onesie twosie, the impact is going to be significantly reduced. So I think it's absolutely imperative for corporations to get involved. I mean, here, the harsh reality, I don't know how many 501c3s there are out there, but tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. The hard thing is identifying, finding where you want to spend your time, money, energy. It's often through a connection in the C-suite in some way. But I think it's food banks, hospitals, anything to do with healthcare, anything to do with education. I mean, you name it. There's a nonprofit out there that's going to support it. And I think the hard part for any company is identifying and even limiting where you're going to apply your money, apply your resources, and that's the challenge. And that's where, again, it's easy for me because I was tapped on the shoulder by someone above that said, hey, I'm going to give you 2 kids with type 1, 1 child with Down syndrome, and the same child with a massive heart defect. So I was tapped, and others, it may be more difficult to decide because you get so many inbounds every day of every week. Somebody out there every day, every city, every organization is asking for money. And the hard part is filtering through and deciding where you want to spend your time and attention.
How much time, I know you spend a huge amount of time in your board service for nonprofit organizations, but how much time, if someone is considering board service, what would you tell them in terms of how much time they could expect or should expect to put into that to be effective?
Yeah. I'm not sure I can give you an hour allotment, but I think the point is you have to make time. If you wait for time to avail itself, you'll never do anything, because you can always fill your time with something. It's work, it's family, it's athletics, it's after school, it's whatever. I think the important part is, and you have to get support from home. I mean, a lot of my time is not even in the city of Nashville, and my wife will often get tired of me traveling to do something for a nonprofit organization, and often it's on our dime, right? It's not, there's no travel, credit card for a nonprofit organization. So it's on our dime, and it's on our time, and so I have to get a lot of buy-in at home. I think the broader point is make time. Unless and until you make time, you will never benefit from, or nor will the organization benefit from your participation. So it's all about it's about time management and deciding what's important in this life. And if you're at a point in your career where you can actually have some control of your schedule, I get early in my career I did not control my schedule, and it's very hard to commit to something because things pop up. There's a meeting that starts at 4. Oh, darn. I have a board meeting that starts at 4. Now I can't go. Understandable. But, there are others out there that are in more of control of their schedule, and you just have to block that time and make it happen. Otherwise, everyone's frustrated.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any time management tricks or hacks that you use that you could share with people? Because, everyone's always like, life hacks.
Yeah, I think the best thing is all of these organizations will produce an annual calendar, and I think the only thing we can do is get that annual calendar, drop it in your Outlook, drop it in your whatever app that you might use, and that time is blocked, and therefore when it comes time to schedule your business day, that nonprofit board meeting is already captured out there on your calendar. That's the only trick that I've ever come up with that works, and that doesn't always work, but that's the best way is just to have the calendar produced at least for the year out, for the forthcoming year, and block it and hope for the best.
And definitely Mary Lynn and JDRF Middle Tennessee, they do a great job of sending us calendar invites to make sure that we don't have an excuse for blocking that time on our calendars.
For sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I live and die by my calendar. So that's a great one.
Yep.
Okay, so before we sign off, I like to end the podcast on a little less serious, more playful question. I call it a burning question, which I kind of stole from Ellen DeGeneres. Love you, Ellen. Anyway, my burning question for you today is, if you were to write a memoir, what would be the title and why?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm sure when I listen to this, if I listen to this, I will have changed my mind 6 times over.
If you listen to this. Come on, Karey.
When I listen to this. I hate listening to myself. All right, so what would the title of my memoir?
It can't be The Look, or maybe it could be The Look.
I think that's copyright infringement at this point. I'm going to say that my title would be Just Get Over Yourself.
Why?
And I guess I've gotten to that point in my career where titles don't matter. Where I went to school doesn't matter. What does matter is now that I have this foundation, how can I best utilize my skill set to improve my company, to improve my community, and to be loved as a father and a husband when I walk in the door at the end of the day. You're going to make me cry, but that's what's important to me is my business, my community, and my family. And just get over yourself. And my wife puts me in my place every day. And
go Joni.
Go Joni.
That's awesome. So, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to the memoir. Well, folks, that wraps up this episode of How It's Done. My guest today has been Mr. Karey Witty, COO of Envision Healthcare. He's outgoing board member of JDRF International, longtime board member and former chairman of JDRF Middle Tennessee, board member of American Heart Association and Monroe Carell Children's Hospital. Amazing father, husband, friend, and I think as we've heard here today, amazing human. So Karey, thank you again for making the time to share your story with us today and for helping shine a light on how you do what you do for the people and the causes that you're passionate about.
Thank you, Christy.
That's it for now. Thanks so much for listening. We're looking forward to keeping great conversations coming your way as we grow this podcast. There's even more great content from our conversations on our blog. Be sure to check it out at growwithfuoco.com. That's grow with Fuoco, Fuoco.com. Stay tuned until next time, and no matter what, stay curious.